Like and subscribe right now, or you're going to have terrible luck for the next week. Greek mythology is probably one of the most known folklore in the modern world. It's a collection of tales passed down orally since the Bronze Age. The stories are, among other things, about gods, goddesses, and monsters. The monsters are usually powerful creatures with unusual abilities that prove detrimental to human life, until heroes slay them into pieces. But that's for another day. Probably. In today's video, our focus is on the monsters that aren't just scary for their appearance, but also for their vicious nature. Buckle up. Number 10. Medusa. We bet you've heard of the Italian luxury fashion brand Versace. The brand's logo features Medusa, one of the most popular mythical Greek creatures. But she was never alone. She had two sisters, namely Stheno and Euryale, and the three were collectively referred to as the Gorgons. Our focus will be the famous Medusa, who is known for her peculiar head covering. Instead of hair, she had a horde of venomous serpents emanating from her scalp. But she wasn't born this way, at least according to some versions of the story. It's believed that she was once a young beauty, but immediately turned into a monster when she had intercourse with the sea god Poseidon in Athens' temple. Athena didn't like this, and so she chose to punish Medusa by turning her into the hideous creature we know today. She was already dangerous enough this way, but the snake served no purpose when it came to eliminating those she chose. All she needed to kill someone was her face. Once you looked at it, that was the end of you, and you'll be immediately turned into stone. But thanks to the gods, a hero named Perseus arose to fight her, apparently sent on the dangerous mission by his stepfather. The gods Hermes and Athena came to his aid. Hermes gave him a unique sword to slay Medusa with, and Athena gave him a mirror so that Perseus didn't have to directly look at the monster. Number 9. Minotaur. Minotaur is more known in relation to Daedalus, the revered Greek innovator, and his son, Icarus. The duo is, on the other hand, popular for their attempt to flee their captivity by fabricating wings, and the reason for their imprisonment was directly tied to this monster, the Minotaur. The creature had a human body and a bull's head, which wasn't so surprising since it came as the result of intercourse between the Queen of Crete and a bull. The physical appearance wasn't the only problematic aspect of this creature. It had a ravenous appetite for human flesh, which necessitated that it be locked away somewhere escape-proof, like the famous labyrinth, designed and built by Daedalus and Icarus. This elaborate maze was meant to keep the monster from devouring the people of Crete. So King Minos of Crete made it mandatory for Athenians to be sending 7 maidens and 7 young men every year to be eaten by this creature. This was apparently to punish the Athenians for killing his son, Androgus. But when one of the Athenians, Theseus, is sent into the maze, he's assisted by the king's daughter and successfully kills the Minotaur while it's sleeping at the center of the intricate maze. Number 8. Hydra. Hydra is the most common name used to identify this monster, but it can also be referred to as Hydra of Lerna or the Lernine Hydra. Lerna in this case refers to the monster's lair, which was Lake Lerna. The Hydra is known for its numerous heads, the exact number being unclear. And not just that. If any of the heads were cut off, 2 new ones would grow in its place immediately, making it one of the toughest creatures to battle. That's if you were lucky to get close enough without being poisoned to death by its breath. But once you cut off a head, you had the blood to deal with, and like the breath, no human being stood a chance with the deadly scent of the blood. That said, it's a known fact in Greek mythology that the Hydra was finally killed by Heracles, more popularly known as Hercules. Slaying this monster was part of the 12 labors performed by the popular Greek hero as a way of seeking forgiveness for killing his sons. So he covered his mouth and nose with a piece of cloth and headed to the creature's hiding place. Hercules, after cutting off one of the heads, dipped his sword in the bleeding neck and used the virulent blood to burn off each one of the other remaining heads. Number 7. Cerberus. Ever fancied an exotic dog breed? If yes, then Cerberus would have been one of your best options. That's if they were still available. But keeping it would have been a bad idea because it wasn't your average pooch. It was way bigger than any dog imaginable and had 3 heads that symbolized different things depending on the version of the myth. One myth states that the heads stood for youth, adulthood, and old age, while others maintain the past, present, and future as the symbolic meaning of the heads. On top of this, it had snakes protruding from random places on its body. Now, you don't want that in a dog, right? Rightfully so, it wasn't kept by people. Its sole purpose was to guard the entrance of the underworld, making sure the living do not cross over to the other side, and vice versa. Cerberus is most known as the 12th and last labor in Hercules' quest for penance. The hero was supposed to fight the big and unusual dog with his bare hands and present it to King Eurystheus. Of course, he did it, but the king was too scared and begged Hercules to take the god-awful dog back. Number 6. Scylla. Scylla isn't a very new word if you've watched the popular TV show Prison Break. In the show, it required 6 cards to be able to remove Scylla from its safe storage. Similar to the show, the Greek mythology Scylla is described as having 6 heads. The monster lived in the Strait of Messina, opposite of Turbidas, where the two devoured unfortunate sailors. Just how did Scylla come to be highly contested? Some writers suggest that the monster was once an adorable nymph and had caught the attention of the sea god Glaucus. This irked Circe, the goddess of magic, who was also interested in the sea god. So the beautiful nymph was turned into the monster to forever terrorize sailors. Other writers, on the other hand, hold that Scylla was a monster right from birth. Number 5. Chimera. This monster was born into a family of other hideous creatures, such as the Hydra and Cerberus, both of which we've looked at in this video. According to Greek mythology, all these monsters belong to Typhon and Echina, father and mother of all monsters respectively. The chimera was largely a lion, but with an added pair of heads, a snake's and a goat's. The snake's head was at the tip of its tail, while the goat's head protruded from the trunk. That's according to most popular depictions. It's not entirely clear where these 2 extra heads were supposed to be. Nevertheless, it was finally defeated by Bellerophon with the help of Pegasus, the winged horse. Bellerophon shot lead attached to a spear into the chimera's mouth, and due to the monster's hot breath, the lead melted, thus poisoning her. Number 4. Typhon. Already mentioned, Typhon is the father of all monsters together with Echidna, the mother. Typhon himself was the son of Hell, otherwise known as Tartarus, and Earth, also called Gaia. And you can bet he was one of the most heinous creatures one would have come across. His general appearance was dominated by a snake motif. Instead of legs, he had 2 snake tails, and his thighs had numerous and huge serpentine coils emanating from them. His head was split into 100 snake heads, which were constantly making all manners of noises and pouring out venom around the earth. And in place of fingers, Typhon had dragons emerging from his hands. But perhaps his height was one of the most intriguing features. In tales, he's described as being tall enough to, get this, reach the stars. Despite the size, he met his match in Zeus, who used thunderbolts to attack the numerous heads. Typhon was finally defeated and sealed away under the earth, where he occasionally flares up. This is why we have volcanic eruptions, according to Greek mythology. Number 3. Campy. Campy is also known as the nymph of Tartarus. She has the duty of watching over the Cyclops and Hecatoncheirus, so that they won't escape the imprisonment that had been placed under by Cronus, the ruler of the Titans. The creature was a mix of human and animal features. A good deal of the upper body was of a beautiful human, except the head. Instead of a pretty face, Campy had numerous heads springing from her shoulders, which made her an uncomfortable sight. Lions, dogs, and wild boars were just some of the animals whose head she possessed. Her near-human head had snakes for hair, just like Medusa. She was later killed by Zeus in the battle between Olympians and Titans. Consequently, Zeus freed the Cyclones and other creatures who helped in winning the battle. Now it's time for today's best pick. Today's photo was sent to us by a subscriber. So if you come across a photo online and want to know more details about it, just send it over to us. We might even feature it in a future video. Number 2. Turbidas. This monster is usually tied to Scylla as mentioned, and again, they lived opposite to each other in the Strait of Messina. When sailors tried to avoid getting caught by Scylla, they would unintentionally run into Turbidas and meet their ultimate end. In Greek mythology, this creature was considered to be the daughter of Poseidon and Gaia, and played a prominent role in the tussle between Zeus and her father, Poseidon. Zeus didn't like that she, Turbidas, had flooded large areas of land with water, so he put a hex on her to be swallowing large amounts of water forever. This creates whirlpools that wreck ships, which places sailors within easy reach of the monster. Before we move on, I've got a little challenge for you that'll take 5 seconds to complete. So here's the deal. You just leave a like on this video, smash that subscribe button, and hit the notification bell, and you'll get 25 years of amazing luck. Try it. It really works. Number 1. Reiko Lucas. We bet you've heard of zombies, the undead people roaming around city streets looking for humans to bite. That's exactly how the Reiko Lucas is portrayed in Greek mythology. But unlike zombies, the Reiko Lucas aren't a result of a lab experiment gone wrong. These undead Greek mythology creatures could spring due to a host of reasons, such as eating sheep meat that was wounded by either a werewolf or a wolf, leading a life of desecration, and excommunication. Burial in unconsecrated land was also thought to cause the zombie-like condition. So anyone who was deemed a possible Reiko Lucas was buried with their bodies pinned down, using large stones placed either on their chests or head. Archaeologists have found evidence of this burial practice throughout the Greek world. So what was the deal with Reiko Lucas? The Greeks believed that these creatures didn't decay but would swell up and later leave their graves to roam about. They will then cause a range of problems to the living, including epidemics, suffocating the sleeping by sitting on them, and converting others to the undead. Of course, the Reiko Lucas loved human flesh, just like the zombies, and would especially target the liver in their feeding frenzy.